we have to take control over our own happiness, because the most important thing is we always need to focus on that which we can control, right? So that's the most important thing. And I say that people have agency over their happiness.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Perpetual Motion, a podcast focused on personal growth, communication, entrepreneurship, and positive relationships. I'm your host, Dr. Mo Anderson. Each episode, I interview thought leaders from all over the globe who share tips and tools that add immediate value to your daily life. My motto is expanding minds one word at a time. And here to help me further that mission today is Jessica Weiss. Jessica is amazing. She's a TEDx speaker, an expert in culture and organizational development. As a consultant, she helps businesses create a culture of happiness, gotta love that, in the workplace. With 15 years of experience working with global brands like Coca-Cola, Johnson & Johnson, and American Express, Jessica is a trusted source for those who are searching for tangible, research-based strategies to create happier workers. And she graduated from the University of Pennsylvania and has an MBA from Columbia University. She's a bad boss chick. Stay tuned. You're going to love this interview.
You can't say Dr. Mo ain't tell ya that fear, man.
Welcome, Jessica.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
I am delighted to have you. I mean, we cannot talk enough about happiness. We talk too much about unhappiness. Let's talk about happiness today. In fact, teaching happiness is such a fascinating career path. How did this journey start?
So for me, the journey started actually, it was sort of a two paths that converged into one. So as a student, as an undergraduate, I was lucky enough to get into a class taught by the father of this entire science of happiness movement. So his name is Dr. Martin Seligman. And I was lucky enough to get into his class when I was an undergrad. And the first day of class, he said that we spend all of our time studying unhappiness. What I really would like to study is happiness and all the ways that we can grow happiness. And when he said that, I was like, yes, that's exactly, I was hooked. I was super interested. So just from a personal level, I was always very interested in growing personal happiness and how can I do it and what can I read and what can I watch. So it was just a personal interest of mine, just something that I was super interested in. And then after I had an MBA and I graduated from business school, I worked as a management consultant. And I worked for pretty big companies like you mentioned, American Express and Coca-Cola and all those kind of places. And we would spend time embedded in those organizations. And the focus of our work there was helping these big companies figuring out ways how they could grow their revenue, how they could find new paths, new products, whatever it is. And as we were coaching them and really kind of understanding what was right and what was wrong with their culture, as you sort of peeled back the layers, oftentimes the central question was always, how do I get better at my job? How do I have more happiness at work? And so when that question, how do I have more happiness at work? It was like alarm bells dinged for me because I was like, oh, this is the stuff that I'm passionate about. This is my personal, this is the stuff I love. So once I started to coach people on finding more happiness at work, and I realized that that was something that I could do. I could marry my personal love and my professional work. That was how I kind of came to the entire happiness space.
That's
so now I spend my time exclusively teaching people how to find more happiness at work. I give talks, I give speeches on how they can build more happiness.
And as you know, there's a strong, not only psychological and emotional, but there's a strong physiological component to that. I don't know if you're familiar with Norman Cousins. I think I'm quite a bit older than you, but he wrote a book called Anatomy of an Illness about how he used humor therapy to help him recover from a life-threatening disease. And he was one of the first to do that and ended up writing a best-selling book. And that was what turned the light bulb on for me in regards to how a positive attitude and positive people and intaking positive programs makes a difference, but I've always thought of it more in terms of your personal life. But at work is really where we have a lot of the stress.
Well, and the truth is, if we can all figure out a way to find happiness at work, that spills over into our whole lives, right? Because when you have like a bad day at work, you bring all of that home with you, and it spills over into every single relationship that you have. But imagine if you could actually go into work, which, and you could love your work, and you can love the people that you work with, and you can be motivated and energized. I mean, that is the thing that we're all looking for. Right?
It is.
So there are things that we can do to actually build that. It doesn't like happen by accident. You have to kind of do some stuff.
Right. Cultivate it. Right. And you just make me thinking about my dad, God rest his soul, coming home from a bad day, and we could almost tell by the way he closed the car door.
Exactly. Exactly.
And then he was just moody. He didn't want to talk, but he was stressed. He was stressed out, because of that. And you're absolutely right. It spilled over into home when it occurred. It wasn't every day, but I was a kid and I can still remember that. Like,
you can feel the energy. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that so many of us don't even think that finding happiness at work is an option, right? We all think that like you go to work and you do what you got to do, and then you can come home and then you can actually be happy. But the truth is you can find satisfaction and happiness at work too. Like it's, we spend a third of our lives working. There's no reason why we should just kind of think that we could just power through and have it, be this miserable experience when it doesn't have to be like that.
Absolutely. And if you live in California, you spend a third of your life on the highway. So the next step is finding happiness in your automobile.
That's a conversation for another time. I live in New York where I don't go into a car. So that's a whole other, that's my personal choice.
Understood. So you work with major global brands, and I'm curious what motivates them to bring you in. I mean, it's not a value or a mission of a lot of companies to increase. They want engagement, whatever that means, but they don't always correlate that with happiness. So what type of situations or what type of leadership thinks, okay, we need to bring Jessica Weiss in and change the culture?
Yeah. So I would say, quite honestly, in the past few years, there has been sort of this tectonic shift in corporate America where certain companies and certain CEOs and certain management tracks do believe in this idea of helping people find, maybe they don't say the word necessarily happiness, but they'll certainly say satisfaction and engagement. And the truth of the matter is engagement is actually a synonym for happiness. It's just a more corporate jargony way to say it. So there has been sort of a shift in the belief that if our employees are more engaged, motivated, excited to be at work, they actually will bring more profit, more productivity. It'll actually hit people on the bottom. It'll hit the corporation on the bottom line. And there have been a number of studies. There was a great study out of Oxford University that just highlighted that the companies, let's call it for sake of this conversation, let's say the top 100 companies in the stock market that were rated the happiest companies, top 100 happiest companies actually outperformed the S&P 500 by 20%. So those companies that have higher ratings for happiness, and there's a whole bunch of questions that, people who have more, where they value well-being, where they're rated the happiest companies at work, they actually outperformed the S&P 500. So this can be both an investment strategy. This can be an internal strategy for companies to perform better, to be able to be more profitable. So there's real data behind it now. So we're actually getting some momentum even from those most cynical spaces.
I love that. I love that. Changing of the guard and changing of the attitude. And thank you for, explaining the engagement component of it, because that's just kind of a nebulous word to me. But,
I agree completely. I agree completely. I'm not big on any corporate words. I tend to stay away from all of that stuff because it drives me crazy. And then I'll get into conversations with people and I'm like, I'm sorry, I need that to be translated into English. I don't know what the KPIs and the RPGs and the whatever is. I don't know what any of that means. Just give me English, please.
Nor do most of the people they're talking to. That's only to impress other executives.
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, the purpose of communication is to be understood.
Exactly.
not to be impressive.
Exactly.
So sweet. Hey, Jessica, does happiness, though, you go into these brands, these corporations, these big companies, but does happiness ultimately depend on the individuals within the company, or is the culture and leadership more important, or is it all together now?
Yeah. So I believe it's all together. So certainly it begins on an individual basis, right? We have to take control over our own happiness, because the most important thing is we always need to focus on that which we can control, right? So that's the most important thing. And I say that people have agency over their happiness. But the truth of the matter is, in an organization, in order to have, let's say, employee well-being be the overall strategy, the CEO, the management all need to believe in this, and they need to create the conditions that facilitate the change throughout the culture. So it begins on an individual basis. Then I think it moves up on a team level, right? Each team, each manager can be in control of their team, and they can create the conditions for their team to have more satisfaction and happiness at work. And then ideally, we have the CEO and all of the senior level management creating that overall macro environment that facilitates all of the happiness to flow. But the truth of the matter is, in these big organizations, and not even in such big organizations, maybe some of your listeners work in smaller companies where they feel, oh, those people are never going to, they don't care about me. They care about, the numbers and this and that. They don't. Well, you have control over you. You have control over your team, and real change can happen at that level. Absolutely.
Okay. I like that. Sometimes in some environments, I have a lot of friends in corporate America. I'm in healthcare, and it's a little bit different, but sometimes I find that the things that are upsetting to people are very much around equity and parity and, things that may be happening if it's patriarchal, if women aren't being paid equitably, and also racial people being passed over who deserve promotions and stuff. I mean, are those things that you look at? Because they never ask that on the surveys that I'm given in the polls, or are those things you look at?
That's a huge, absolutely. That's a huge indicator of employee well-being and overall happiness at work. And I say that in order to start to build satisfaction and happiness at work, there needs to be a preliminary bar that is met for everybody. So it doesn't matter what your job is. It doesn't matter what you do. But there are two things that every job needs to have. They have to hit this base level in order to start to build happiness. And it's exactly what you're saying. The first one is that people need to feel that their success is earned. So by that, I mean that, people aren't given promotions and raises on a random basis, that things are merit-based, that you're working towards something, and there's transparency and equity throughout the organization. So that's a central foundation to building satisfaction and happiness at work. And the truth of the matter is, I also just read a study that said, and I think it was from Gallup, that less than 1/3 of people believe that their organizations value equity and are doing things in a fair and equitable manner. So getting back to what I said, so there were two things that every job had to have. Everybody has to believe that your success is earned and that you can work towards your success. And the other thing is, which is a little bit different, is that people need to feel that in their jobs, they are doing something that improves the life of somebody else. In other words, that they can't do for themselves. But that equity piece is a huge piece of finding satisfaction and happiness at work. If that's missing on a personal level and on an organizational level, no, we'll never be able to get to places, where we can really start to dig in and start to do strategies to actually build happiness. We've got to meet that baseline right from the outset.
Understood. And I've seen a great movement toward that, but there's still room for improvement. Work to be done. So toward that end, I mean, you really got me thinking here. How do you measure success, the outcomes? Because the surveys will give you one thing, done over a span of time, but you also talked about how this impacts the bottom line and triple bottom line, the financial bottom line. That's not going to be immediate. So within what time span do companies typically see, this increased profit?
So that study that I cited that came out of Oxford and Harvard University was over a 3-year period.
Okay.
So they looked at companies starting in, I think it was 2019, 2020, and then we had results in 2023. So that was a long period of time, but I think it's not going to be immediate. You're exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
And certain indicators are going to be lagging and certain indicators are going to be contemporaneous and certain things that you can measure immediately. The profit piece will certainly be something that takes a little bit of time, but the way that people are subjectively feeling, and that can be determined through interviews, through exit interviews, through the way people feel in their first 90 days of being onboarded. There are certain marks that, while it might feel subjective, is actually a collection of data that starts to make sense when we start to really get numbers around it. So in addition to all of those engagement surveys and everything else, I think that there are certain points in an employee's career where we can come in and do a measurement, whether that's an interview or a survey, where we can really start to understand whether the organization is making changes in a positive direction.
Okay. Great answer. Thank you. You have, I'm sure you customize and tailor your workshops and your curriculum depending on where you are, but you do have some signature talks, as most speakers do. And I'd like to throw out some of the titles that we found on your website and have you just give us an overview of your philosophy.
Sure.
So the first one is 4 Habits of Building Lasting Happiness.
Right. So that one is very much around taking personal control over your happiness. And I will give you a teaser on what some of those habits are. But I won't give them all away because you got to hire me to get the whole thing. But I'll give you a piece. So one of the most important foundations or indicators of happiness, and this, what I'm about to say, you've heard a million times before, but it is so important. And it's a critical tenet of happiness, is this idea of friendship, right? We need friendship and we need relationships, however they look. So in those, one of my signature sentences is friends are magic, because they truly, truly are. And in this day and age where we all feel that we're connected to everybody from Instagram and Facebook and wherever else you feel that you have these connections, quote unquote, right? We need real, genuine connection. So that's the first one. That's the first kind of personal habit that we need to do.
Okay.
And then I'll give you the next one, which is super easy and your listeners can do it immediately and it works within 2 weeks. And it's been studied scientifically, and it's what I call my joy journal. And that is every night at the end of the day, I want you to write down 3 things that brought you happiness that day and why. So the and why part is important because oftentimes we are only focused on all the bad stuff that happens and we don't spend any time looking at the good stuff. And this can be super simple good stuff like you smelled a beautiful flower, you had a great lunch, whatever it is. Or it can be something more substantial. You had a wonderful conversation with your best friend where you reconnected after not having spoken for a while, whatever it is. But what this does is, throughout the day, it forces you to look for the good stuff, right? Because you know that you have to write down 3 things, right? So you're looking for the good stuff all day long. And by writing it down, it allows you to re-experience it, right? This idea of savoring the good stuff, really taking it in, soaking it in. There's stuff that happens in your brain, neurologically, that when you savor the experience, you rewire your brain for more happiness. So those are my 2, that's 2 little previews.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing those. The next one is, and I can't wait to hear what you say about this one, is why women need to surround themselves with women.
Oh, okay. So this is really interesting. And this also talks about the friendship piece and this whole idea around relationships. And this talk is all around this idea. There's a whole body of science. First of all, there's a beautiful body of science all about friendship and all the benefits of friendship, right? And how friendship actually is the cure for stress. Friendship is the remedy for everything, any physiological thing that, this epidemic of loneliness, friendship is the remedy for all of that connection and belonging. But
I believe
what
that.
the science has shown us is women who surround themselves with other successful women are more successful than those who do not have an all-female circle. So by surrounding yourself with other women, right? So there are women who go around saying, I'm not really a girl's girl. And, there's sort of that, I don't know. It really bothers me, to be honest, but this like undercurrent of like women are gossipy or out to get each other or whatever it is.
Yeah,
exactly. I actually don't ascribe to any of that, but I think that that's kind of what's working here. What kind of goes on in people's minds. But the truth is, women who surround themselves with other wonderful women are more successful. Period. End of story. So even if you're not a girl's girl, but you want to be successful at work, maybe you need to rethink that. That's what I say.
I love that. And I've got some amazing women around me who were just running through my mind as you were saying that. And just for me, it's the encouragement and, they're happy for me when I'm happy. And when I'm sad, they're supportive, and I've got some great men in my lives, but they don't, they want to fix it.
Well, it's exactly it. And the science tells us there's some magic, there's some alchemy to surrounding yourself with a group of successful women. And I think that that's a wonderful idea that all of us need to really kind of start to incorporate into our networks.
And they inspire me, which I think is probably part of that female connection as well. Because even if I just talk to my friend Ann, she's like, oh, I just went for a swim and I'm, later today I'm going to ride my bike. And I'm like, dang, I need to get up and do something.
Exactly. And the truth is there's, the way women relate to women and female friendships and the science behind female friendships is different than male friendships and is different than female and male friendships. Women connect on a different level. Men connect on a different level, like men connect around activities, right? It's a different kind of connection. I'm not bashing it in any way, shape, or form. It's a very real connection, but it's different. Women connect around emotion. Women connect around sharing. So all of that leads to this idea that when you have a group of successful women, you propel yourself to more success.
Yes. And absolutely, we are not male bashing. It can be separate, but equal, and different, but equal.
Exactly.
Just not the same.
Just different. Exactly.
Just different and no judgment. And the last one, how conquering fears leads to gaining confidence.
Well, this is a big one, right? Everyone wants more confidence, whether it's across the board, whether it's at moments when you're like, when you really feel you need to kind of dig into your reserves and find more confidence, whether you're giving a presentation or you're going on an interview, whatever it is, whether it's across the board or in moments of our lives, we all need to build more confidence. And the key to building more confidence comes from, it's two things really. First one is action builds confidence. So we all wait to feel confident. We all wait to feel brave. We all wait for those anxiety feelings to go away. And the only thing that is going to make all that stuff go away is actually doing the thing that's causing all the fear and the anxiety and the worry. So action is the cure for that feeling of imposter syndrome or lack of confidence. And the other thing that builds confidence and is a little bit quieter and maybe a first step is actually keeping the promises that you make to yourself. So if you say you are going to do something, you need to actually do it. And the more and more that you keep your promises to yourself, the more faith you can have in yourself that you're actually going to do the things that you say you're going to do. So it's action and it's keeping promises to yourself.
That's good. And not only do I try to keep promises to myself, because I'm very good about keeping them to other people, but there was a period where I was putting myself on the back burner, but I also reward myself. So I'm trying to program my Pavlov's dogs or something.
Okay, tell me some rewards. I want to hear. Any good ones?
It may be that I just take myself to lunch at some place, one of my little favorite places. I don't have to have a big group or reservation or anything. It may be mani-pedi. It may be that
I love all of that. It's all stuff that you want. It's a good promise to yourself. Like, hey, I did it, and I'm going to enjoy something now.
Exactly. And it may be watching a TEDx talk like yours. So I'm going to go back around to, we've both done TEDx talks, and that is definitely one. I want to tie back to conquering fears leads to gaining confidence. I don't know about you. I've been speaking for 30 years, but that particular moment going on that stage was like the biggest talk of my life, because I knew, not potentially, but it was going to be seen globally. And that took a lot of self-talk. Everybody around me was saying great stuff, but that took a lot, even because the people who went before me even were phenomenal. How was your experience? And then tell the listeners about your talk, because it is a wonderful, wonderful talk. I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. So my TEDx is titled Happiness, It's an Inside Job. And I too have been speaking for a long time, not 30 years, but about a decade. And
are you trying to say I'm old on the back?
No, not by any means. You just have you have wonderful more experience than me. I hope to get there soon.
I'm messing with you.
So I love speaking, but the truth of the matter, and I love it. It's my most favorite thing to do. And you probably feel the same, but it is also the thing that makes me the most nervous. I get nervous before every single one of my talks. Mm-hmm. And no matter what, I'll be standing in the wings and I say to myself, why do I do this to myself? What is wrong with me that I put myself willingly into this situation?
Yeah.
So that at the TEDx talk was probably tenfold, so I was feeling all of those anxieties, all of those worries. Mm-hmm. But something magical happens, and I'm sure you find the same thing. Something magical happens when you get out there and you find your moment, right? You dig into your heels and you sort of flip the anxiety and you use the nerves for good rather than for destructive purposes. And it feels, then you're in your flow, and it's really, you can't replicate it, right? Nothing else in life is that can be that moment.
No, it's a rush. There's a saying that sometimes you have to jump first and then you sprout and then the wings come. And I feel like for me with speaking, because I get the same thing. In fact, my best speeches, I get nervous if I'm not nervous, because
that's true. No, you're right.
That adrenaline just takes me next level, and it's like a zone. And I really have to listen to myself after I speak, because I'm like a whole different zone, a whole nother person. I don't even know what I said sometimes.
No, me too. I'm exactly the same. I just gave a really big talk actually in Detroit. And it was a very big audience. Thank you. And it was a really big audience, and it was a really big stage, and I was really excited about it. And the night before, I'm in the hotel and I'm walking the hall and I'm like, what is wrong with me? Why do I do this to myself? Yes. I don't understand. And then the magic happened. I woke up in the morning. I did all the, you have your routine. You do all your stuff. I woke up in the morning and I was super nervous. I don't know who was talking to me, who was asking me what. If you wanted to feed me like poison, I would have taken it. I don't even know what's happening. Right. And you step out onto that stage, and that moment, it's just, I don't know. It just, it does something to me.
It's something. I have a couple of people that travel with me. It's really nice to have a familiar person in the audience, and they know that at some point they're like, okay, I'm gonna start talking to you. You're in that zone. You're not even, no, you're not even.
Yeah, you're not even hearing me.
You're not even hearing me anymore. But
exactly.
And for the people who, if you've got a speaker in your life and you support them, even if you've heard them a million times, it is something about having somebody in that audience that you're touched on, that you can look at and
I also have a person like that, and I say, cool. if she says it's good, then it's good, because I have no clue whether it's good or not.
Right.
So if she tells me it's good, and I'm good with it.
Yeah. It's the best thing. And that's a gift as well. Just like our gift of speaking, the gift of being able to support and encourage people is really a beautiful thing. Well, share with us about your services and how listeners can connect with you online if they want to bring you into their company or have you speak.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. So obviously you can find me on my website, which is at jessicaweiss.com, or you can connect with me on Instagram. I am the Jessica Weiss on Instagram. And the way that I work with people is I do speeches, right? That was what we were talking about. So I do keynotes, I do talks, I do workshops in organizations. I coach teams and I coach individuals. So if you want to build more happiness in your life, more happiness in your organization, please reach out and we would love to talk about how we can help make that happen for you.
Super fantastic. We'll be sure and drop that in the show notes. And thank you again, Jessica Weiss. This has been fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, listeners. Please visit my website as well at drmoanderson.com. That's MOE Anderson for more about my books, events, or to message me about speaking to your group or serving as a speaker coach for yourself so you can do your own TED Talk. And be sure to subscribe to this podcast so you're notified about new episodes of Perpetual Motion each week. Until then, be well and be safe. Thank you. And wasn't that a great program? Oh, love that episode. I enjoyed it. I hope you did too. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Learn more about me on my website, drmoanderson.com. That's MOE. You can read book excerpts, watch videos, learn about my services that I offer, and book me for a speaking engagement. I'd love to talk with your group, and I'd love to work with you. So until the next time, review, renew, and renew. Thank you.